Welcome to the place where we, the people, have a chance to express our opinion. In this case, William Wagner's opinion. With me today as my guest for the second time this year is Dydzak from Los Angeles. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you very much.
Did you enjoy your drive up the coast?
It's the most beautiful country around here.
That's why I love it up here, in spite of all the rotten politicians we have to pass on the way.
Well, you got some good vineyards.
We do have some good vineyards. That's the redeeming grace. I want to remind you people, in case you forgot, about a case called, it's known as U.S. versus Williams. It's found at 504 U.S. 36. And that opinion was by Justice Scalia, Antoine Scalia, who wrote for the majority of the Supreme Court in 1992. Again, it's found at 504 U.S. 36. And the deal of it is he wrote many startling things. The overwhelming theme, if you look at Wikipedia, it doesn't tell you the important stuff. If you look it up on Wikipedia, it talks about the right of the prosecutor not to give a grand jury all the exculpatory evidence of somebody they're indicting. He needs only to give them the information for which they have a basis to indict. But in this jewel of this case are clear statements from Scalia, who wrote for the majority of the U.S. Supreme Court, otherwise known as SCOTUS. He writes that the grand jury does not belong to any of the three branches. It doesn't belong to the judiciary, it doesn't belong to the executive, and it doesn't belong to the legislative branch. So who does it belong to? It belongs to all of us, we the people. That's who it belongs to. And because it belongs to us, he writes, the judiciary cannot even give instructions to the grand jury on how to run it. Which means that guy I had on my show way back in 2002, that guy from Oklahoma who was on the Timothy McVeigh grand jury.
Glenn Wilburn's probably the most prominent. His grandsons were killed in the explosion, and he's an accountant, so he's intelligent. He wasn't a government employee, and he figured out right quick something was wrong. He never did figure out exactly what was wrong, but he got close enough to it that they killed him.
They killed him?
Yes, they did.
That judge that removed him from the grand jury was totally off base, except he had appointed him. So we're not talking about that kind of a grand jury. We're talking about Scalia's 1992 affirmation of a long-standing judicial factoid. I want to call it a factoid. Most of you have never heard of this. You think the judges appoint and should appoint the grand juries. They do appoint them currently. All those grand juries are bogus. All of them. Because the grand jury is supposed to be self-appointed by we the people. That's the important thing you get out of. Now, it doesn't mean the judges can't appoint them, and they have been doing it for almost a century. And these are bogus grand juries. In fact, in the Michael Jackson case, which took place right here in Santa Maria, California, that crooked rat piece of crap, Thomas Sneddon, excuse my blunt language, he went through two prior grand juries, putting the same rotten evidence, and they said, no, we're not going to indict Michael Jackson based on this kind of evidence. No, Tom Sneddon, we're not indicting him. And that was a grand jury appointed by a judge of Santa Barbara County and led by the nose, taking my hat off for you people that tuned in to watch today. And we've got some startling stuff here for Mr. Daniel Dydzak, which is going to roll your eyeballs back when you hear him give it to you. But I want to make you aware, the grand juries by we the people cannot be put aside by a judge, nor put aside by the sheriff, nor put aside by the legislature or the executive, because it's made up of we the people. And this is what makes 504 U.S. 36 an absolutely startling opinion, and that is not said in Wikipedia. So if you just go online and Google 504 U.S. 36 and you read what it says in Wikipedia, you're going to miss the main point. They don't even mention the power of the people. Scalia says, and it's very clearly he says this, the grand jury, once properly formed, the oaths of office are filed, their bonds are filed, they are unimpeachable. They are above all three branches. And he clearly says they're there to correct it when the other three branches of government have gotten so corrupt. That's why you need a We the People grand jury. And I have a feeling that before this year is out, we're going to see a We the People grand jury in Orange County. Where Tony the Rat, otherwise known as District Attorney Anthony Rackauckas, rules like a mafia don and deliberately tried to lose the case when Officer Cincinnati and the other officer were indicted. I watched that case with my own eyeballs, and it's on record that I petitioned that judge, and the judge gave me 10 minutes to speak. I said, I want my own camera in this court. I want to get it on my film. He said, no, you just media, you join the media pool. That's not what I wanted. But anyway, that's a minor point. In my opinion, Tony the Rat intentionally lost that case against the two officers that are seen on videotape beating, punching, and crushing this homeless man, Kelly Thomas, to death. Rackauckas needs to be indicted, just as I predicted Mike Corona, the former sheriff, I predicted a decade ago that he is dirty. He needs to be removed from the sheriff's office. And still he won re-election, but then the feds came in and they gave him 60 months. When the trial was done, he did 60 months in Club Fed, which is a euphemism for federal prison. There's no good time. What was amazing is after he was convicted and sentenced, that judge in Orange County, in the federal courthouse, I believe it was, trying to remember, it's like a decade ago, he allowed ex-sheriff Mike Corona to walk out with his wife on one side and his girlfriend on the other side, walk out of the courthouse and stay free until his son graduated from high school. What kind of equal justice under law is that? I have never seen somebody convicted of a felony, a serious felony, and then he's allowed to walk out of the courthouse, never even go to the jail, and he can report to federal prison at his leisure after his son graduated from high school. That's not the kind of courts our founding fathers had in mind. Anyway, I go a little far. Just look up 504 U.S. 36, read the bullet points, and then go read the entire decision. Because you, sooner or later, are going to find yourself being wrongly prosecuted, wrongly treated in the corrupt system. So go look right here. It's right here on the screen, right here. U.S. versus Williams, 504 U.S. 36, a 1992 case. Look it up, Google it, read that case. There are literally thousands of people in America. David Scheid, near the Michigan-Oregon border, he's filing something in federal court to have a judge removed because the judge put him in jail 5 counties away just for coming in and watching somebody else's kangaroo trial. Is that abuse? Is that abuse of authority? I think so. But it's just William Wagner's opinion. No one should go to jail just because you came in, sat, and watched somebody else's trial. So you could be a witness against a judge. So they took David, and it wasn't David's trial. He was witnessing somebody else's trial, and put him in a jail 5 counties away so his friends and family couldn't even find him. I go too far. I want to read you something about the impeachment of judges. As my friend or colleague in fighting for justice here, ex-attorney Daniel Dydzak, so I'm proud to say he's no longer a member of the corrupt Bar Association of California. Is that right, Daniel?
Well, I'm trying to get my license back.
But at this time, you're not a member of that
I'm not
corrupt.
practicing right now.
So you guys that are suing the bar, you're not suing Daniel because he's not a part of it. He's not practicing. But listen to impeachment of federal judges. Article 3, federal judges are appointed to life terms while serving, quote, during good behavior, unquote. And there's a lot of bad behavior, in my opinion. As stated in Section 1 of Article 3 of the United States Constitution, though it does not expressly state in the Constitution that judges may be impeached and removed from office, they fall under the label of, quote, civil officers in Article 2, Section 4. That says, quote, "The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors," unquote. Impeachable offenses. The United States Senate has removed judges from office for the substantial questionable conduct, even if no crime was committed. For example, Judge Robert Woodrow Archibald was impeached and removed from office for improper business relationships with litigants. One reason for this may be the life tenure bestowed upon federal judges and Congress' place in upholding the, quote, good behavior of the judges. Let me just give you a few. In 1803, John Pickering of the United States District Court for the District of New Hampshire, he was nominated by George Washington, good start, in 1795. The charges were mental instability and intoxication on the bench. Convicted by the United States Senate and removed from office March 12, 1804. And then guess who got to appoint his successor? Samuel Chase of the Supreme Court of the United States in 1804 was nominated by President George Washington in 1796. Charges: arbitrary and oppressive conduct of trials. And he was acquitted by the United States Senate on March 1st, 1805. In 1830, James Hawkins Peck of the United States District Court for the District of Missouri, nominated by President James Monroe in 1822, charges abuse of contempt of power, acquitted by the Senate on January 1st, 1831. So there's a long history of federal judges being impeached and some of them removed. I can think of a lot of reasons, like having sex in chambers with litigants. They should be removed because they obviously now have a bias. And it's appalling that county judges exposed as having sex in chambers. It was consensual, therefore there was no foul. Do we build chambers for judges to have sex in? I don't think so. I don't think so. They're supposed to go to a whorehouse or a motel for that. Anyway, moving on. In 1873, Mark W. Delahaye for the United States District Court, the District of Kansas, was nominated by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863. Charges: intoxication on the bench. He resigned, however, from office December 12, 1873, before a trial in the Senate. And, you know, Richard Nixon was under impeachment, and he resigned office, bringing it up to a time that we can all remember, people my age anyway. Then you go move on to, in 1904, Charles Swain for the United States District Court of Northern District of Florida, nominated by President Benjamin Harrison in 1889, charges of abuse of contempt of power and other misuses of office. Too long to go into here. He was acquitted, however, by the Senate February 27, 1905. Then you have 1912, Robert Woodrow Archibald of the United States Commerce Court, nominated by President Howard Taft, who was a very popular president at the time. He was nominated by Taft in 1910, charges improper business relationship with litigants, and convicted by the Senate and removed from office on January 13, 1913. That's just about the time the really supreme bank gangsters stole America. You know what I'm talking about? The creation of the IRS, the Federal Reserve System, all of which changed the dynamics of politics, and the corporations have been running America ever since, particularly the banking corporations. So there's a long history of people being convicted, choosing to resign. George Washington English of the United States District Court of the Eastern District of Illinois resigned office November 4th, 1926, at which time impeachment proceedings were dismissed. Charge: abuse of power. So judges can be abusive of power. And that brings us to Daniel Dydzak, who's here with me live in the studio. This is a live show on Wednesday, the last day of May. Daniel, do you know of any current judges that are abusing their power?
Well, I have several judges who I've requested the impeachment of. I sent a letter out yesterday requesting the impeachment of the Oakland judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers. She threw out my case illegally, and now that is in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. A judge, I moved to disqualify her. I've asked for the impeachment of Claudia Wilken, another Oakland senior judge, who, in my opinion, took bribes from Charles Schwab or his entities. In my case, which is still pending before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, I have asked for the impeachment of the former Chief Judge of the Ninth Circuit, Alex Kaczynski, who was recently featured on a 60 Minutes fluff piece by Leslie Stahl, for improper conduct, including but not limited to taking bribes from Charles Schwab.
Now, you just brought up Schwab. Can we see we've got a shot,
It's the face sheet of the lawsuit.
just the face sheet. And it's Daniel D. Dydzak, plaintiff, versus Charles Schwab, Molly C. Dyer, Alex Kaczynski, Kim McLean Wardlaw, Richard A. Paz, Marcia S. Berzon, Mary Margaret McCowan, Alan Rothenberg, Ronald M. George, somebody you mentioned a lot in the first show you were on,
Yeah, he's the former Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court.
Eric M. George, his son, William M. Wardlaw, who does a lot of fundraising for certain Democratic folks, right?
Right, he's with a company called Freeman Spogli. Mr. Spogli was a former ambassador to Italy under the Obama administration, and he raises money in offices in Century City and New York City, but he was a big Democratic fundraiser for the Obama campaigns, both presidential campaigns and other Democratic candidates, and he's married to Kim McLean Wardlaw, and both he and Kim Wardlaw, in my opinion, per the lawsuit, received bribes from Charles Schwab or his related companies to affect my litigation. So I've named, in that caption, there are several Ninth Circuit judges named, and I've named some of their spouses because they're aware of the corruption of their spouses, judicial spouses. So I had no choice but to name them, in my opinion,
For aiding and abetting?
for aiding and abetting and being conspiracy and interfering with the unlawful processes of the court. Obviously, a judge can't have, federal judge or a state judge in a legal matter, when there's litigation, cannot have a financial conflict of interest, such as bribery. And if their spouses are aware of it, they're complicit in it. So that's why I named Stephen Berzon, who's a well-known labor lawyer, employment lawyer in the Bay Area. His wife is Marcia Berzon. They got illicit contributions, financial contributions for Charles Schwaber's entities to affect litigation. Kim McLean Wardlaw's husband, Bill Wardlaw, got illicit campaign illicit payments from Schwab entities. I didn't name Mr. Kaczynski, Judge Kaczynski's wife, but apparently she's aware of it. She should have. I could name her in the lawsuit.
You could. Do you remember a guy, did you ever hear of Charlie Sprinkle?
No.
He was on this show 3 times. He sued Governor Ronald Reagan,
Right.
Nancy Reagan. He sued the cop that pulled him over and gave him a ticket for not having license plates and not having a driver's license. He sued the cop's wife. He sued the cop's supervisor, the supervisor's wife, all the way up to Governor Reagan. And he won. It went on for 2 years, and he said finally they sent guys in black SUVs to his house,
Wow.
came knocking on his door, and he was like, oh, I got the gun close by the door in case I have to shoot it out with these guys. But it didn't come to that. They opened the door and they talked very politely, and they said, Mr. Sprinkle, would you please drop Nancy Reagan and all the wives? They had nothing to do with your speeding ticket. And he told them, I'll take it under advisement.
Right. Well,
But he never lost that case, and the judge finally dismissed the no license plate because he was traveling in his private conveyance. He was not driving a taxi or an 18-wheeler in commercial traffic.
right.
And most people don't even understand what I'm talking about, but just go look up that His name was Sprinkle, Charlie Sprinkle.
Yeah.
He
Well-
won. You might win, but he sued all the spouses.
You know,
so
I
you
don't.
could sue all the spouses.
I'm very careful about who I name in a lawsuit. There has to be a legal and factual basis for it, and I wouldn't name.
So you wouldn't go as broad as Charlie did.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know the specifics of his case, but I'm suing the spouses because they are complicit and in conspiracy or collusion.
They're
with their,
actively involved.
With making sure that I can't exercise my proper legal remedies, and those are torts, and I deserve compensation. As you know, you can't get damages against judges generally, because they have immunity in most situations. But their spouses are not immune from damages. If they're in conspiracy or collusion with judges who happen to be their spouses, they are accountable in damages. And if they know that their judicial spouses are being bribed by someone like Charles Schwab, they have a duty to come forward and say to their spouse, I don't want to be part of it. In fact, most of the spouses, by and large, are trained in the law, either are attorneys or inactive attorneys, or have legal training, so they know better than to allow their judicial spouses to violate the Constitution of both the United States and the Constitution of California.
Spoken like one learned in the law. Charlie Sprinkle wasn't learned in the law, but he named the spouses for giving aid and comfort to the cop that was breaking the law, to the cop supervisor that was breaking the law, all the way up to Ronald Reagan. And he didn't collect any money. But his case for his no license plate, no driver, was dismissed. And I had him come back in the second show like you've done. And you brought these papers showing your letters, and this one's to Honorable Sidney R. Thomas, Chief Judge in Billings, Montana, who's, I believe, now the presiding judge of the 9th District.
He's the chief judge, and he's under impeachment investigation also. I've also filed an ethics complaint against him, which has been assigned to actually a very good judge in the 9th Circuit, Stephen Reinhardt, I'm sure by special assignment of Chief Justice Roberts. So he's under, he deliberately with others delayed the filing of the ethics complaint. It took me approximately a month or more to get it filed. It was a great struggle. I had to write letters to President Trump and all sorts of other people. Finally, they filed it, and it was assigned to Stephen Reinhardt. It's still under submission. So I'm alleging that he is in conspiracy with various judges to not have rulings on my case. In the letter you're looking at, I put him on notice in February of this year that there have been several appeals in the 9th Circuit. There have been a deliberate non-ruling of things. I've been put in a black hole. In other words, I have motions pending on these appeals and other proceedings going on, and they won't rule. So
yeah, and what happened right after we did the first show? You said they wouldn't even give you a case number back then. And after that first show got on YouTube.
Well, what happened was when I went on your first show, I was having difficulty filing ethics complaints. There's a procedure in federal statute if you want to file an ethics complaint against a federal judge that you can file a complaint, but they were not filing them. And when I went on your show, shortly before the show or after the show, finally they got filed, and there was a lot of scrutiny, and I got a lot of feedback, and I didn't get any negative feedback from your first show. Everybody believed everything I alleged, and it was largely because of your first show that a lot of these ethics complaints have been processed. In fact, I recently got, I didn't bring it with me today, a letter from the solicitor to Chief Justice Roberts of the U.S. Supreme Court, and they have forwarded some of my correspondence apparently to the Federal Administration of the Courts in Washington, D.C. on Columbus Circle. So I've now caught the eye of Chief Justice Roberts with a lot of my correspondence, because obviously I will assume that he doesn't want to see corruption concerning federal judges, especially implications of bribery, which has happened in my case to the point where I've asked the SEC chairman to investigate Charles Schwab and take away his brokerage license.
Whoa. Mr. Schwab, I want to extend equal time if you want to come on the show and rebut anything. Same thing to all the people we read your names, all you judges, Alex Kaczynski. I'd love to have you on the show and give you a chance to explain your perspective on this. I urge you to give me a call, send me a letter, and we'll schedule a time for you to get your say-so and your perspective And that includes all of you and your spouses. I'd love to have you come in. Tony Rakalkas of Orange County, come on, sir. I'd love to have you on my show. I want you to come on my show. I want to give you equal time. I want you to explain how you could prosecute personally, getting off track here with Mr. Dydzak.
It's all right.
I want you to explain how you could prosecute two cops seen on videotape punching and crushing a man to death. And to this day, as far as I know, the names of the jurors have never been released. And that trial is years in the past. Kelly's mom filed civilly and got $1 million settled. His dad filed civilly and was awarded, I think, $2.5 million. Ron Thomas, if I got that wrong, come on my show. I'd love to have you anyway.
I think they settled out of court, but it was a substantial amount of money.
It was Ron got more. Ron and Mrs. had been divorced for quite some time. So they each filed separately, just so you understand. They weren't double dipping. They were two separate legal entities at that point. But I would love you, Mr. Rakalkas, to explain how the forensic guy from San Diego, I'm not naming him, he's on my YouTube clip, who said Andrea Nelson was clearly murdered. It was not an accidental overdose of cocaine down there on Huntington Beach Harbor on that street. I've got videos up with Andrea Nelson and her mother, Linda Cater. I would like you to explain how you could call twice to the coroner's office and instruct them to rule it as an accidental overdose of cocaine. I talked to the hospital aide that took the body of Andrea Nelson out of this Iranian man's arms who claimed she just passed out. And he told me to my face, Andrea's body was already cold. The bodies don't go cold after you pass out and die like in 10 minutes. Even though it was wintertime, this is Orange County, it wasn't that cold. He was supposedly passed out in the car, which was heated. Andrea was clearly murdered, and that's why those people tore that house down wall by wall till there was no forensic evidence that could ever be found in some future forensic examination. And I would like you, Mr. Rakowski, to explain to me on live television how it's your business, but you have a private coroner hired to do the coroner's office, why you're calling them twice in one night and saying, rule it accidental overdose. When I've got a forensic examiner from San Diego who, until he received an invitation to Orange County and pressure was put on him, he was stating this was murder. Now he won't say anything. Now you've made him go silent. Do we have the mafia operating? Are you the head of the mafia, Mr. Rakalkas? Are you the head of the Orange County Mafia? Do you represent the 5 families? I just want you to give me an answer. I'm just asking an honest question. I just want to know. I think the people of Orange County deserve to know. Anyway.
People of the United States, he's a high-ranking official of a major
county.
Population center, and
7th largest
it affects the whole country, not just Orange County.
And just recently, didn't a couple of your people from your office just turn against you like just a week ago and rat you out? I know, Mr. Rakalkas, please come on. I beg you to come on. I want to give you a chance to give us your side of the story. I'm fair to both sides, and I understand you have a different perspective. Let me hear your voice. Come in the studio. When I called out Mike Corona, was it 10 years ago in 2006, 2007? And it was only on my website where I had that short video. My whole website disappeared. And then, a year or two later, Mike Corona got indicted. And since sheriffs and elected DAs work like this, hand in hand, I've got some other questions that I think the people of Orange County deserve to have answered. And Mike Corona, I invite you to come, now that you've done your 60 months in Club Fed, I invite you to come on my show and give me your opinion of what went wrong, did they really charge you with 107 felony counts and then only prosecute you for 6 or 7, and then only one of them was upheld? Is that what I remember? And you went on one felony for 60 months. Did you know something more? Would you like to rat out Mr. Rakalkis, Mike Corona? Just asking. Just asking. Just throwing the question out there. Anyway, you have another letter. I'm getting back. This is about Danielton, and there's so much corruption in the court. It's just hard to separate it.
It's disturbing to hear about the Orange County situation.
It's disturbing it's disturbing in this county, where they prosecuted Michael Jackson with completely fabricated and bogus evidence and got away with it, even when it was exposed in the trial. And I got a lot more to say about that, but it'll be in my book. Anyway, here's the letter dated April 22nd to Congressman Bob Galati of Virginia, chairman of the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee. And it's signed by Daniel D. Dydzak. Oh, and you copied President Trump, copied to Honorable Roberts, Chief Justice, Honorable Sidney Thomas, Jeffrey Sessions, Attorney General, Molly C. Dyer, Clerk of the Ninth Circuit, FBI Director Comey. I think he's a little busy right now,
Well, he's no longer there, but at the time he was.
but I think he's still really busy covering his tracks.
Well, he can always go to a big Washington, D.C. law firm. I'm not too concerned about Mr. Comey's welfare.
Yeah, okay, I get you. And Senator Dianne Feinstein, Stephen Bannon, Don McGowan, White House Counsel, Representative Darrell Issa of San Diego area, I believe,
Right.
and Representative Trey Gowdy of South Carolina. And this is dated April 22nd.
Right. The letter was also sent to Senator Grassley.
I see that.
The procedure, as you showed the law to the people at the beginning with a lot of those famous cases, is when you want to impeach a federal judge or ask for the impeachment of a federal judge, you first go through the House Judiciary Committee, and if they recommend articles of impeachment by a majority vote, then it goes to the Senate for a trial. If you remember Richard Nixon, the President of the United States, the Watergate thing, everybody's well aware of that. What happened there was there was a vote for impeachment in the House, and it would have proceeded to the Senate for an actual trial, just like William Jefferson Clinton, the former president. He had a trial, which was presided by the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, William Rehnquist. So this is not a small matter that I'm doing, asking for the impeachment of these judges. But what am I supposed to do when the system lets me down, and there's a series of cases that I've been involved with where I'm fighting for my legal rights, and they get bribed by someone like Charles Schwab? And I'm asking for his license to be yanked. I think he should be assessed multi-million dollars worth of penalties. What am I supposed to do? Am I just supposed to sit back and take the abuse of judges that care about their own self-interest and financial gain rather than the rights of every litigant in the court system?
You issued another letter,
Right?
April 22nd, to Congressman Bob Galati and copied to Senator Chuck Grassley of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Formal request for impeachment of Honorable Alex Kaczynski, Judge of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, this is only 4 days after the first, and this one you go into more detail. Specifically, while Chief Justice of the Ninth Circuit, Judge Kaczynski unethically and illegally would not allow to be filed my duly submitted motions in my case of Dydzak versus George et al. 11-55-143. Well, you got a case number there.
Right. And it's an active case. There's a motion pending which they refused to rule on. And that case went to the U.S. Supreme Court. Certiorari was denied. I made a motion to reopen it. In that particular case, several motions were not allowed to be filed. Judge Kaczynski with Circuit Judge Wardlaw and Circuit Judge Pius committed obstruction of justice, a criminal act. They didn't let me file a motion to disqualify the panel for cause and based on other factors. They didn't let me file a petition for rehearing en banc, when you want the whole panel of the Ninth Circuit. And they wouldn't let me file a motion to compel the clerk to file the motion. So that Kaczynski, who was the chief judge at the time, who's still on the court, he just recently did the 60 Minutes interview, he committed a criminal act of obstruction of justice. And I did alert the U.S. Supreme Court to it in my writ of certiorari, and they have discretion to deny the writ. And I did do an ethics complaint against Judge Kaczynski on that, which Sidney Thomas covered up for the crooked criminal acts of Judge Kaczynski and the 2 other circuit judges and dismissed the ethics complaint. But I have very specific allegations of what he did. The other thing he did is he took bribes, improper financial incentives with his wife from Charles Schwab or his entities, which is a financial conflict of interest, because in my state bar disciplinary matter, the trial judge was bribed by Schwab. So Kaczynski knew that a big bone of contention in my allegations was that Schwab bribed a series of judges. And he didn't reveal at the time he made this ruling several years ago that he had financial investments with Schwab. The other thing he did is he's got a multi-million-dollar house in Palos Verdes, and he maneuvered to get a loan from either Countrywide or Bank of America, and it looks like he didn't even put any money down. So what these judges did with Bank of America, Countrywide, a lot of these federal judges, such as Kaczynski and his wife, they get these no money loans down. They make a lot of money in the house appreciates, and then they cash out at the end. So that to me is illegal. So if you notice, the federal judges never rule against, hardly ever, on the Ninth Circuit against Bank of America. They didn't rule against Countrywide because they cover up the corruption because they get favorable financial treatment. Now, to me, that's criminal activity by a federal judge. And Kaczynski was a willing participant. If you saw the 60 Minutes interview, he took Leslie Stahl, the journalist, to his palatial mansion overlooking the Pacific Ocean. So I'd like the House Judiciary Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee to look into how he got that home loan. And I want to mention, when I sent in that impeachment letter about Sidney Thomas and the impeachment letter about Kaczynski, they were hauled to Washington, D.C. about 4 or 5 days later to go before a congressional committee on whether the Ninth Circuit should be split up. So it did have an impact. And shortly after those 2 letters were sent, I got a letter, which you have, from Senator Feinstein. So it's obviously of concern to them, the Senate Judiciary Committee and the House Judiciary Committee, that you got judges like the former Chief Judge of the Ninth Circuit, Kaczynski, and presently still on the court as an active judge, taking bribes from Charles Schwab. And that's why I've requested his impeachment. He should be removed from the bench. Not only did he get bribed by Schwab, in my respectful opinion, he committed obstruction of justice. That's a criminal act. A clerk is not allowed to not file documents. He can't decide willy-nilly, well, I don't like this disqualification motion against me, and tell the clerk not to file it. But that's what he did. Well, in my world and under the law, that's obstruction of justice.
But we don't have the actual audio of him telling the clerk, don't file that, do we?
No, but I have a series of letters to him, and it was in my writ to the U.S. Supreme Court. I put the whole record of numerous letters to him and Chief Judge Roberts saying that Kaczynski and the clerk of the court and others were committing obstruction of justice by not filing my documents. I got so exasperated they wouldn't file these motions that I finally was running out of time, the 90-day limit to do my writ of certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court. And then, fortunately, recently, well, I won't say recently, it's pretty old now, I did get a motion on the docket of that appeal to reopen it for fraud upon the court by Judge Kaczynski, Judge Wardlaw, and Judge Pius. They're just sitting on that motion. It is on the docket, and they refuse to rule. Not just Kaczynski, not just Wardlaw, not just Pius, every judge of the Ninth Circuit, including Sidney Thomas. And that's why I've asked for his impeachment. He cannot, as the chief judge procedurally and administratively, instruct the clerk not to rule on things.
Wow. Sidney Thomas, I extend to you an invitation to come on my show and give me your opinion as well. I would so love to have you come on and defend yourself because you're a human being too. I presume you're an American too, though you could be a Canadian for all I know, because I remember asking a certain judge in this county, do you have to be an American to be a judge? He says, that's a good question. Why don't you call the Bar Association and ask them? And I'm thinking, why should I have to call a private club known as the Bar Association, which does not issue licenses for the state? They issue membership cards to their private club. Why should I have to go to I wouldn't go to the Elks Club and ask them that question, or the Moose Lodge, or the Boy Scouts. They're all private corporations. And it just struck me as odd. But
well, I would like to have Sidney Thomas come on this show and explain
I would
to Mr. Wagner why I have about 4 or 5 appeals in the Ninth Circuit, and they won't rule on any of these motions. I have one motion in a particular matter that's been on the docket for almost a year to reopen my disciplinary case in the Ninth Circuit, and they haven't ruled on it in a year. So this is what they've done. As an attorney I know that you know, Mr. Zerman, said they put me in a black hole. They put me in a black hole. So instead of dealing with the corruption in my matter, well, we'll just hold the hands of other judges and we'll support them, and we just won't rule. So we don't care about the rights of this guy, Dan Dydzak. We care about our own self-interest. And that's a damning accusation of me, but that's the reality. And that's why I've asked for their impeachment. So I implore the House Judiciary Committee, and I implore the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I asked the senator from this great state, Senator Feinstein, I asked Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, and Senator Feinstein, why are you not moving to impeach these judges that are violating my rights in a California federal court?
It's a very good question, and it leads me to, again, back to that case I cited earlier, 6, when all branches of government failed to do their job, their sworn job, and they refused to do it. And we've got a copy, we've shown you the copy of Daniel's letter, and Dianne Feinstein answered and basically said, good luck, but I can't intervene. That's basically...
She certainly can intervene,
she can.
And I don't even... I think you should call her San Francisco office right now.
Should
and
we call her?
Yeah, ask her to come on this show. Call her I got the letter from San Francisco. It doesn't have her Washington number. Call the San Francisco office and say that we're on live on your show, and ask Senator Feinstein
I think I'll do that.
to show up on your show at a convenient time for her. She is a great senator for this state. She's been a senator for some 22 years. Ask her to come on this show and explain why the Senate Judiciary Committee and the House Judiciary Committee are not moving to impeach judges that take bribes from Charles Schwab and commit obstruction of justice.
We are making that call right now.
Or ask Kamala Harris.
Well, I can't get a hold of her right now. She's really
but-
busy. She's meeting with lobbyists at this time.
Well, Dianne Feinstein seems to be doing a lot more than Kamala Harris.
Here we go.
Senator Feinstein's office, this is Anna. Will you please hold?
Anna, this is a live television show. I'm calling. Can you put me directly through to Dianne Feinstein? She put us on hold.
She'll come back.
It's lunchtime, and we know these people take 2-hour lunches, especially if the senator isn't present in the office.
Well, I got the letter from San Francisco, so that's her home base, and she was the mayor.
Yeah,
of San
I
Francisco.
dialed the right number. She answered.
She'll be back
This
on.
is their San Francisco office.
And you could reference the date of the letter and tell her that I would like her to go on your show. She
Yeah,
knows who I am.
well.
I've written her several letters.
Okay, well, we're waiting for her to come back live, which I don't know how long that'll take, but I'll just keep her on the line here. You got a letter dated May 8th of this year, sent to Congressman Bob Goodlatte of Virginia again, Chuck Grassley, Jay Clayton. Request for formal investigation by SEC of the Fortune 500 financier stockbroker Charles Schwab in connection with impeachment investigations of Honorable Chief Justice Sidney R. Thomas. Are you listening, Anna? And Honorable Alex Kaczynski, judges of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Dear Congressman, et cetera, I, Daniel, and in conjunction with the ongoing investigations of federal judges Thomas and Kaczynski, this missive is also formally a request on a SEC investigation of the Fortune 500 financier, financial advisor, and stockbroker Charles Schwab. Mr. Schwab has been, without question, involved in a major misconduct, systematic bribes, and illicit financial incentives given to California state judges.
And federal judges.
And then you're going to give a brief summary of some, but not all those. Have you got the physical proof of this, Dan?
Yes, they have financial disclosure statements that are mandated by federal law.
And in those statements. Yes, Anna, this is William Wagner. We're live on Take Back America television show. Could you put us through to Dianne Feinstein right now?
I cannot know.
Can you reference her letter to Mr. Daniel Dydzak of April 27th? Are you taking notes, Anna?
No, you know what I am going to do is send you through to the press office.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
And here's their phone number. It's 202
202
224
224
9629.
9629. And who will answer there, Anna?
I'm not sure, but someone who can help you with.
Can you
press
repeat the
inquiries.
number just so we have?
Just to be sure, I got it is 202 224 9629. Is that correct?
Exactly.
That's her office in D.C.?
Yep.
And who will answer, their head administrative aide or who?
I am actually not sure who answers that phone, but they'll be able to direct you to the right person.
Well, we're concerned of her lack of desire or interest in impeaching Kaczynski and other judges of the 9th District. And I'd appreciate if you'd take a note. Take a
They're going
note.
to be able to answer all those questions.
Okay,
Could
but
you please let her know that Mr. Wagner, who's out of Santa Maria, California, called on his live show because I've asked for the impeachment of several federal judges. And could you please let the senator know that we have her letter up on his show and we're asking her to comment on it and come on his show because federal judges, in particular matters involving me, have taken bribes from Charles Schwab and other allegations. So we'd like to speak to, he'd like to speak to Senator Feinstein. I'd like to talk to her in person. I'm even willing to go to Washington, D.C. Maybe Mr. Wagner would be willing to shoot something in Washington, D.C.
yeah, we would film her in D.C. if it's convenient for her. But give her that message, Ann, and thank you very much.
You're welcome. You have a good day.
We are. Thank you. Bye. Well,
Why
this
don't you
number,
try the press number there?
Yeah, this number is not on her letterhead.
Yeah, but that's a Washington number, so
Yeah,
there's a time
so-
difference. So let's get
going.
let's get there
'cause
before they go
before
home for dinner.
They go home for dinner at 3 o'clock
Well, there's
sharp.
a lot of fine. I heard there's a lot of fine bars and restaurants in Georgetown.
There are a lot of fine bars and restaurants in Georgetown. To be sure. That's why
Well,
everybody wants to
she
go
was
to Georgetown.
very polite, but
She was. But she didn't get us directly connected. So we'll see what we do with this number. Okay, we're calling people, Senator Feinstein's office given to us. Hello.
Feinstein. Hi, Feinstein Press. How can I help you?
Hi. This Denise?
No, sorry, Sydney.
Oh, Sydney. Sydney, this is William Wagner. I'm live on Take Back America television show right now in Central California with Daniel Dydzak. And he's got a return letter from Senator Feinstein indicating she doesn't feel she can do anything to impeach Alex Kaczynski and Judge Sidney. And I'm wondering if you could put her on the phone with us because we would like to ask her directly.
I don't think I can do that, but if you'd like, I can pass along a comment.
Yeah, would you please tell her Daniel Dydzak and William Wagner as well believe that the Constitution allows her to proceed with impeachment proceedings and she ought to at least look into it because he is charging Charles Schwab's financier corporation of paying bribes to get certain judgments. And this is a really serious accusation. And he's here with me right now if you want to hear from him directly.
yeah, I wanted to mention I sent impeachment letters on various federal judges. I'm a former practicing attorney who was illegally disbarred, and several federal judges have taken, in my opinion, bribes from Charles Schwab or his entities and done other illegal actions, including not filing documents through the clerk's office, not only the Ninth Circuit, but in other federal courts. So Senator Feinstein will be a very nice letter, personally signed by her, what looks like her fountain pen, on April 27th, 2017, and she said that because of the separation of powers, she couldn't do anything because at that juncture, because some of it was in litigation. Well, under the U.S. Constitution, a senator, she's the senior member of the House Judiciary Committee, I think, other than Senator Grassley, she has powers to look into the conduct of federal judges. So I have several federal judges under impeachment investigation, and I've sent several copies of letters to Dianne Feinstein. When she wrote me this letter, I'd sent in an impeachment letter against the Chief Judge of the Ninth Circuit, Sidney R. Thomas, out of Billings, Montana, and also former Chief Judge Kaczynski. And what Judge Kaczynski did in a matter involving me called Dydzak versus Georgia, He willfully took bribes, in my opinion, from the Fortune 500 financier Charles Schwab. Well, I'm sure you're familiar with Schwab, talk to Chuck, and also other judges, such as Kim McLean Wardlaw. So I would really appreciate if I could meet with her, or she could come when she's in California next time. You know, William's based out of Santa Maria. I'm sure he'd be willing to come to San Francisco, her home base, and meet with Mr. Wagner and I and discuss the gravity of several federal judges in legal matters involving me in the Ninth Circuit and other courts taking bribes, such as Judge Kaczynski, who was recently featured on 60 Minutes with Leslie Stahl. This is really serious, and that's why we're on this live show. And I really very much appreciate and respect Dianne Feinstein for writing me back, but I think she's got to do more for me. And I've also alerted President...
I appreciate your comment. I'm sorry. We actually don't allow anything to be recorded on the phone. So this is
Well,
being recorded.
this is media. This is
But
a live television show, and
appreciate you calling, and I will be sure to pass
Can
along
we
the
can we
comments.
give you William's telephone number so she
Yeah.
can call him back?
I mean, I can pass along the comment, yes.
Yeah, can you? Can
No,
I give you?
Let me give you a phone number, and have her call me back. She can call me back at 805-928-1100.
Great. All right, well, I'll be happy to pass that along.
And remember, I did tell you we're on a live television show when we started this conversation, and I always do
And
my.
as you probably know, you cannot record.
Yeah, you can if I inform you.
I appreciate you calling, and I will be happy to
Actually,
pass
under
that along.
Washington law, I think that you can record, but it doesn't matter. It's just a live show.
She hung up. Thank you very much.
Well, we're not
She's
record.
gone.
We're not we're doing it on open air. It's a media
Yeah.
event. It's not.
It's-
and you did inform her up front that
did.
we were on live air, so
I did.
you didn't do anything illegal, in my
So
opinion.
we're not getting very far. She's not going to put us through to Dianne Feinstein.
Well,
and
she's
that's the problem with all our so-called representatives, Dan. None of them representatives. You can't talk to anybody.
well. What I'm going to do after the show, once
You can't even talk to your
Once this
congressman.
show is up, we're going to write her I'm going to write her a letter at least and let her know that there's been an interview and that she's been featured in her letter, and perhaps one of her staff or even herself will look at it. And I will even alert her in a letter that I'll write her, letting her know that her letter was referenced and on this show.
Can I read this list quickly?
Sure.
I want to get this on record here, people. I appreciate you who are spending your lunchtime. I hope you're not sitting in a nursing home, but I appreciate you people watching during your lunchtime. Here's a brief summary of some, but not all. This is his letter that he sent to Senator Chuck Grassley, Jay Clayton, Esquire, Chairman of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, and Congressman Bob Goodlatte, who's Chairman of the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee. Page 2, a brief list and summary of some, but not all of those actions toward me, meaning Daniel Dydzak right here. Number 1, upon reasonable information and belief, Mr. Schwab and or his attorneys bribing California State Bar Judge Donald F. Miles in legal proceedings involving me. I hope you can prove that. Number
Yeah,
2.
I can. He has financial disclosure statements.
Number 2, upon reasonable information and belief, Mr. Schwab and or his attorneys bribing former Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, Ronald M. George, in legal proceedings involving me. Me is Daniel here. Number 3, bribing Oakland federal judge Claudia Ann Wilkin in Dydzak versus Schwab et al. In or about January 2017. Case number C as in Charlie, V as in Victory, 164799. Number 4, Oakland federal judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers knowingly about said bribery of Judge Wilkins and condoning the same, as well as being biased and having conflicts of interest towards me. Number 5, I'll let you read it, Daniel, because I'm losing my voice.
Washington, D.C., Judge Helen S. Uvell being bribed by Mr. Schwab in Dydzak versus Schwarzenegger et al., where I sued the former governor. Los Angeles, California federal judge Cynthia Snyder being bribed by Mr. Schwab in the aforesaid litigation. Former Los Angeles, California federal judge Audrey Collin being bribed by Mr. Schwab in legal matters involving me in U.S. District Court. That's the Central District of California. Ninth Circuit judges Alex Kaczynski, Kim McLean Wardlaw, Marcia Berzon, and Mary Margaret McCowan being bribed by Mr. Schwab in appeal number 11-55143. There's a motion pending, which they won't rule on, and they wouldn't let me file another motion. Ninth Circuit Judge Ronald M. Gould being bribed by Mr. Schwab in a pending Ninth Circuit case affecting my standing as a federally licensed attorney. And he's on the panel about to rule on the executive order of Trump on immigration, President Trump. Ninth Circuit Judge Mylan Smith, Jr. being bribed by Mr. Schwab in a pending Ninth Circuit case called Dydzak versus Cantil Sakiu. Ms. Sakiu is the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court. So here you have a series of cases involving me where Charles Schwab has bribed judges. And that's because I had sued him earlier for a former client, Chanel Stotts, as I explained on the first program I did with Mr. Wagner. And so he wanted to shut down this multi-million-dollar litigation, so it was cheaper for him to shut me down where she wouldn't have any representation.
Wow. And you did sign this letter.
Yes, of course.
It is signed on the final page 3. He signed it. Copies were sent to Donald J. Trump, Honorable John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the SCOTUS, Honorable Sidney R. Why do you call him Honorable?
Well, that's a term of art.
I know, but I would just say Judge Sidney. They're not honorable, and I disagree.
Out of respect for the institution.
For respect for the institution, I get it. Attorney General Jeffrey Sessions, Molly C. Meyer, all the same people.
And see,
there.
Dianne Feinstein can't claim she's not getting copies of things. I CC her on most of the letters I've sent.
Yeah, she's listed here.
And she claimed in her
you
letter.
got a response from her.
Well, I did get a response, but she said she couldn't intervene because of separation of powers, and she owes a duty as a senator to intervene.
Wow. Here on May 15th of this month, 2 weeks ago, you issued another letter. This one again, copied to Senator Chuck Grassley, U.S. Congressman Bob Galati of Virginia. Request by Dydzak for impeachment of the U.S. District Judge Claudia Wilken of Oakland, California. Dear Congressman Galati and Senator Grassley, I, Dydzak, respectfully request that the House of Representatives Judicial Committee commence an investigation into egregious misconduct by Oakland U.S. Senator Claudia Wilken. Now, that's the one you told me she liked cameras in the courtroom, wasn't it?
No, what happened was I was assigned the case that you put up on the beginning of the show. When I found out that the Judge Rogers was biased towards me, had conflicts, I moved to disqualify her, and they assigned it to her. And she's a senior judge on the Oakland court, and she didn't disclose. She took about a month to rule, right after New Year's, and she didn't disclose to me the fact that she has about 40 or 50% of her financial portfolio with Charles Schwab.
Whoa.
And the reason it's relevant is the case is called Dydzak versus Schwab. I'm alleging that Schwab bribed a bunch of judges. So here you have a judge that knows that she's got 40 or 50% of her portfolio for years with Charles Schwab, which are on her financial statements. And here she's ruling knowing that she's got a conflict with Charles Schwab or his entities. So how can you draw any other conclusion but that she was bribed? I mean, the standard is not, I use the word bribe, but it's financial conflicts of interest or the appearance of it. So what is she doing, ruling on a major case? And her failing to disqualify Judge Rogers, who was biased towards me, led to the dismissal of my case. Then I had to appeal, and now the Ninth Circuit has deliberately sat on the case. They won't put any judges' names on the docket of the case. In fact, an order was issued, a fraudulent void order by the clerk saying, well, we may view your appeal as frivolous, so therefore respond to it. Now, obviously, under the rules, it has to have 3 judges ruling. It had a clerk's name. So under protest, I filed an objection. There was a response. So they haven't ruled on it. So they've deliberately stonewalled my case, which, as you know, was filed in the summer of last year. We even spoke about the fact that I was going to do it. You invited me to come on your show back then. And I said, well, let's see how this case plays out in Oakland. Hopefully I get a fair judge. And you said, I'm willing, and you were very honorable about it, I'm willing to go up to Oakland, put in a media request, and film your case. And what did Judge Rogers do? She throws the case out before you can get your media coverage of her. And she knew what she was doing. And she's a good friend of Kamala Harris and Ronald George and she fixed and a former state bar president, and she basically didn't follow the law. She broke the law, and she's unethical, and I've asked for her impeachment. I filed an ethics complaint, and it took me approximately a month or so to file it. It was only when I pressured the Ninth Circuit to file it by writing Donald Trump and Jeffrey Sessions. And the Department of Justice, even though I didn't bring the letter, they opened an investigation, which I believe is still pending, over the fact that there was an ethics complaint that wasn't allowed to be filed against Judge Rogers and Judge Thomas. And so here I am trying to exercise my rights. Now, I wouldn't normally file this stuff, like ethics complaints, but when they don't follow the law, what am I supposed to do?
Well, that's the question for we the people. This is how we're going to have to take back America, people. We're going to have to form our own grand juries. Because when judges break the law, and appellate judges break the law, and in Mr. Dydzak's case here, for a while they wouldn't even give him a case number. If you can't get a case number, you can't proceed. Because every case that's filed must have a case number. Isn't that not correct?
Well, what they did a couple of times is they made it difficult for me to file the case. One time I went down to the downtown federal court, and it took them 3 days to file it. They refused to file it, even though I had the filing fee. That was my case where I was suing the FBI agent. It was bothering me. And it's interesting, after your show, and after I got the Dianne Feinstein letter, I guess because she's on the Intelligence Committee, maybe she did say something, the wiretapping slowed down. There's still, I think, a little bit of it. And it came out, as you know, in the news recently that the FISA court found out that the Obama administration was allowing a lot of wide wiretapping. So I don't think former Director Comey was going to do anything about this renegade FBI agent that bothered me and harassed me, tried to break into my house, frankly, or my condo.
Well, he beat on the door really loud.
Well, he was actually trying to come in there with a hit squad to try to have me illegally arrested, in my opinion, and seize all my computer records and my papers, because I'm putting pressure on crooked people, such as the former Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, who stole multi-millions with former Governor Schwarzenegger. And I'm putting pressure on people like Charles Schwab. So one of my friends told me before this show with you, he was concerned that Charles Schwab would hire a hitman and kill me because I'm stepping on a lot of big shoulders. Well, I hope it doesn't come to that.
Well, I think there's less likely, now that you've done this show, there's less benefit to them.
Right.
To putting
I'm
putting out a kill contract.
I'm grateful that in the United States that the press is available and creators, journalists like you, to tell the story. We don't live in Putin's Russia. We don't live in Mao Zedong's China. And fortunately, your definition of the truth is better than the Pravda definition of the truth. And journalists that are good want to get out the story. And
that's why I invite you judges that we've named and Charles Schwab.
And why not even
come on my show and give us your point of view of what he says your financial disclosures will prove the bribes.
And what about Chief Justice John Roberts of the U.S. Supreme Court? I asked you, Chief Justice Roberts, are you going to discipline your federal judges? Are you going to respect the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution? Are you, Chief Justice Roberts, are you going to get the U.S. Supreme Court to step in indirectly and make an inquiry? Now, I'm glad that it appears that you appointed Judge Reinhart to investigate Judge Sidney Thomas, but it has to go farther than that.
Farther.
If judges are taking bribes, they should be removed from the bench. They should resign. They shouldn't even, in my opinion, get a retirement money. If they're crooked, they don't deserve it. They should be told to get off the court, or they should be impeached. And that's why I keep on writing President Trump. And I know he's not perfect, nobody is, but at least I think he cares about there being some semblance of fairness in the court system. And as you know, he's been very critical of the federal court system. And I didn't bring the letters with me, but two of the judges that are ruling on his executive order on whether or not the immigration order is valid or not, it was struck down by a Virginia federal court. I have sent in impeachment letters against them. One of them, Ronald Gould, took bribes from Charles Schwab or his business entities, had a financial conflict of interest. And the other, Judge Paez, is under impeachment investigation. And it's interesting, I got those letters off to the Senate Judiciary Committee in the House. I got them off knowing after they had oral argument in Seattle. And I wanted the Trump administration to be aware of the unethical behavior of Judge Paez and Judge Gould. And they haven't rushed out their decision. So if they're going to listen to this program or see it or hear about it, Judge Paez, Judge Gould, you should be impeached. You violated my rights. And I hope you're going to be fair to the Trump administration on the executive order. Now, follow the law. Now, maybe you don't have a cup, but I've alerted President Trump, Judges Paez and Gould, to your malfeasance towards me. Now, that may not have an impact on your ruling on the executive order, but I think it's important that people like Jeffrey Sessions and President Trump know about it. Now, I'm not doing this because I feel I want to be not a nice human being. I waited for years to do this. I went through the legal system, like I said in the first program we had.
I can affirm that. That is a fact. I've been asking Daniel at least 3.5 years to come on the show and explain to us how he got disbarred. What was the case you first got disbarred over? What was the...
Well, it was a series of allegations, most of which was completely trumped up because I was put on a hit list. And one of the reasons I was disbarred was because I was suing Charles Schwab in a multi-million-dollar case. He had already settled with this particular client, Chanel Stotts, for a significant sum of money without divulging anything further about it. And it's referenced in actually a Court of Appeal decision, so I'm not divulging anything. And he didn't want to deal with me. His lawyers at a law firm called Howard Rice, which is now Arnold Porter, because it's Kenneth Hausman, it was easier to get rid of me. Take me out so she didn't have representation. And when I was taken out, she no longer had counsel. She couldn't find counsel. She didn't have the resources to fight him.
Is that why she settled?
No, she didn't end up settling. They tossed the case.
Oh.
And that was, they looked up my background. They knew I was a fighter. And they knew that and actually one of the attorneys on the matter, who's very crooked, called Sean Shaleag, he's on the board of governors or board of trustees of the state bar. So they rewarded a crooked attorney that fixed my case in the state bar court with Judge Miles. They rewarded him to some extent by putting him on the board of governors or board of trustees. The big law firms control the state bar of California. They give big money, they give contributions. So do you think any of those lawyers like Sean Shaleag and Kenneth Hausman and another guy called Bernard Burke, who's now a law professor, do you think that they discipline those shyster attorneys? No, they don't. In fact, they applaud when they fix the system.
And they give them Attorney of the Year award, is which they did to the guy who threw the case. He literally threw the case. His name was Dale, I believe, if I recall right. And I was at that courtroom in the downtown Los Angeles federal courtroom when the family who had their grandchildren murdered by a sheriff, LA Sheriff Department detective, who was then promoted, they brought their civil case, and and they wouldn't let me tape. They wouldn't even let me write note. I got a note from the black judge presiding on that case. I won't mention the name, but there's only 2 active black judges in that floor.
You're talking about downtown LA?
Downtown LA federal.
That's not Otis Wright, is it?
No, I didn't mention any names.
Well, you know what? He put the kibosh on my legitimate case in the suing the FBI agent and other people. And I'm gonna, hey, Otis Wright, when you hear this or you hear about this, trust me, I will be suing you for your misconduct. And since his name has been brought up by me, I'm not only going to do that, I'm going to ask for your impeachment, and I'm going to file an ethics complaint against you. I'm not going to do it right away, maybe, but I'm going to get around to it because I don't like corruption, Judge Wright. You threw my case out sua sponte when I was harassed and followed around and illegally monitored by an FBI agent. And one reason you threw it out and you should have disqualified yourself is I was suing your fellow judge on the bench, a guy called Henri Barat Jr., who used to be the head U.S. attorney under the Obama administration in the Central District. And he was behind the illegal monitoring and surveillance of me upon information and belief by that rogue FBI agent. So what did you do? Instead of follow the Constitution and disqualify yourself, and other judges disqualified themselves, but what did you do, Judge Wright? No, you went ahead and threw my case out sua sponte and painted me as a nutcase.
Dan, for the people that do not know Latin, what does sua sponte mean?
Well, sua sponte means on his own. In other words,
Right.
he
On his
threw
own
out my
initiative,
case
without
even giving
considering
me
it.
a chance to put anything in writing disputing the dismissal of it. Now, that never happens. I've actually never heard of it happening. Now, I suppose even if a court considers a lawsuit to have no merit, they have to give you what they call due process. We discussed that. It's pretty basic. Fifth Amendment, 14th Amendment, Bill of Rights. Due process means you get a right to be heard. And even if you can't do it verbally, at least have a chance to put something in writing. That's a basic precept of any civilized legal system in the world, especially in a great country like the United States.
We don't have a civilized judicial system.
Well, according to Atty.s Wright, it's at least in that particular case, it's all right to throw a case out without due process, and it's all right to be friends with a judge. That I was suing this particular person, Mr. Barat, while he wasn't a judge. So here you had a judge, I think her name is McConnell. To her credit, she disqualified herself. And you know why she disqualified herself in the case? I know I might be a material witness, or I know one of the parties. She was referring to the judge. And I made a motion to disqualify that whole court, saying, you know this particular judge, transfer it outside of that court. Did they do it? No. It's easier to throw it out. Oh, and then you know what happened with the appeal on that case?
No.
Judge Bay, they threw it out too. I have motion to reinstate it. Judge Carlos Bea, who's also under impeachment investigation in the Ninth Circuit, he's good friends with Ronald George. He went ahead and dismissed it with an improper quorum.
When you reach this high position, isn't it almost a matter of fact that all these guys are swimming in the high echelons of the judicial system? They're all going to end up being friends. They all know each other.
Right. Well, now,
So it's almost hard not to become friends.
I don't have any problem with
Play devil's advocate a little bit. You know, they almost have to become friends.
I don't have any problem with judges having a fraternal or collegial spirit. They're on the bench. Most of them worked hard to get where they got, and I don't have any problem with that at all. Lawyers hang out with each other and play golf and bridge, and judges do the same thing. That's not the problem. But when you name a judge as a party to a lawsuit, and you happen to be very good personal friends with that judge, it raises an appearance of a bias. And if you're very close friends with that judge, the standard in the United States federal law, in the 28 U.S.C. 455, I believe, is that you recuse yourself. It's not that complicated. There are plenty of judges out there that can take over a case. You might remember that case with Microsoft years ago. I think it was in the D.C. Circuit, where there was a judge, I think his name was Penfeld, and he started giving media interviews while the case was going on, an antitrust case. Well, Microsoft was able to disqualify him, and he was removed from the case. Now, I don't know if he got reprimanded, but, he wasn't supposed to be giving press conferences to the press. And Microsoft alleged, how can he be fair? Because he was kind of giving an opinion to some member of the press. Now, it's different if it's not an active case. Judges can comment on basic policy issues or give their opinion if they don't have an active case. Now, I think what, for example, Judge Kaczynski did doing that fluff piece with Leslie Stahl, he did it in reaction, in my opinion, to your first interview with me. He did it shortly thereafter. He wanted to make himself look good. He knew that I had done an ethics complaint against him. He knew that he had done things that should lead to his impeachment. So what did he do? He ran to his friends at 60 Minutes and got the piece done. And I understand that Leslie Stahl's husband is a well-known attorney in media relations and works for a big law firm, and they make a lot of money on media law or whatever. So why would a federal judge all of a sudden want to do an interview with 60 Minutes? 2 or 3 weeks after he does the interview with me, where I'm accusing him of bribery. And then remember, he went on the 60-minute interview and said, judges are appointed for life. They can't remove me. Well, guess what? I sent an impeachment letter. There's good cause to remove him, and he should be removed. And I hope members of the Senate Judiciary Committee and House Judiciary Committee are going to watch this interview and look into it.
And if you just tuned in, you're watching Take Back America, one of my two shows. The other one is On Second Thought. And we started this show today, this live show, the last Wednesday of May 2017. I started reading you the dates and the names of Supreme Court justices that have been impeached and removed.
Or you should say more like federal judges. Like the
Federal judges,
the case that I love is you might remember in the 70s or 80s, there was a judge appointed by President Carter, Judge Claiborne. I think it's on your list. And he was in Nevada, Harry Reid territory in Las Vegas. And he was accused of tax fraud. And even after he got convicted, he didn't voluntarily leave the bench, and the Senate moved to impeach him. And I recall, but I'm not 100% certain, that he was even accused of improprieties with certain members of the opposite sex in his chambers. Now, I could be wrong on that.
Well, you're wrong on the date. It was 1986.
Okay.
Harry Claiborne of the United States District Court for the District of Nevada, nominated by President Jimmy Carter, who I tend to like, in 1978, so he'd been on there almost a decade, charges of income tax evasion and remaining on the bench following a criminal conviction.
Now,
He was convicted by the Senate and removed from office on October 9th, 1986, but he didn't go willingly, which means they probably had to send a federal marshal into his
I don't know about that.
courtroom and say, Judge, we're removing you now on orders of the Senate.
They probably changed the locks. But then there was the other one on
Could
your
have been
list
that too.
who I recall, I think he's actually serving in Congress in Florida, according to one of my friends.
You're talking about L.C. Hastings?
Yeah,
of the
he was
United States
accused of
District Court?
conspiring to take a bribery. I think they had him on video.
Perjury and conspiring to solicit a bribe.
I think he's serving in Congress. He redeemed himself, but he was. A friend told me he's in Congress. I don't know, out of Florida.
But,
I don't know if that's true.
All congressmen except Ron Paul take bribes. I'm sure we can. If we had God's perfect window, I'm sure we could catch Feinstein, Kamala Harris, and their predecessors. I forget, Alan Cranston, I think was his name.
Right, Alan Cranston.
All of these guys took bribes. I mean, the FBI, that's how ISA got the Congress seat in San Diego. They caught his predecessor literally on film taking bribes.
Well,
and then other guy from what, Chicago or Ohio, he's in prison.
I know that the thing is, when you give, and at least to his credit, he was truthful about it when he was running Trump for the Republican nomination. He said, I gave donations to everyone. That's the way business is done. He knew that he would have a better chance of getting, say, a permit to build a building in downtown Manhattan if he gave a contribution to everybody there. So what has Charles Schwab done with me? How does he get rid of a problem? Pay a bunch of judges money to get rid of a longtime member of the bar, because that's cheaper than fighting a lawsuit legitimately. And I want to mention that former client of mine, Ms. Stotts, had gotten a substantial settlement. It's actually referenced in a Court of Appeal decision. I can't mention the figure, but it's public record. It was a very substantial amount of money. And she had dated the co-founder of Charles Schwab's company, Hugo Quackenbush. So he didn't want to pay out another big settlement. So what was easier, getting rid of the attorney so she had no capable counsel, or doing the litigation and paying his attorneys $500 an hour? So that it's a sad statement on Charles Schwab that he thinks he can manipulate the system.
Yeah, well, there you have it, people. So in summary, as we're down to our last 1 or 2 minutes of this live show on the last Wednesday of May 2017, Daniel Dydzak, do you think coming on this show was worth your time and money to come 300 miles round trip from home? Did this have an effect?
I think you do a public service by getting the story out. And I know that there, without elaborating, there was feedback right after you did the last show. You got a few interesting phone calls, apparently.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Right, and without elaborating. And I want to mention, because I know the Supreme Court of California is going to be watching this, Chief Justice Taney and Ken Tilsacchio and others. I have put out a settlement demand letter, which you received, I'm sure, yesterday. Litigation continues. The corruption exposure continues. People like William Wagner will do the right thing and expose it. Now, if you don't want to settle, fine. See you in court. Now, even though I've lost a lot of faith in the court system, I still got to believe there's a few honest judges out there. And I want to believe, because of people like William Wagner, that there are a few honest journalists out there. Because unfortunately, a lot of journalists do stories predicated on an agenda. And it's unfortunate to say that. I think there are a lot of fine journalists, but a lot of them, they're beholden to these big corporations, and they won't do the stories that William does. So he's to be commended for that. You would think a reporter not operating out of some big ivory tower in Manhattan or San Francisco or whatever wouldn't be able to get the story out. But a courageous journalist in Santa Maria, California does make a difference. Look at the coverage he did of the Michael Jackson matter.
Yeah, it was the only one that called it right, and they hated me.
Well,
for
that's
it.
why Tom Mesereau did your show. So
I think that's
the
part
great
of it.
criminal defense lawyer. So again, thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome.
And again,
You're welcome.
I love your white hat, and I always get kind of like you dress so well compared to me, and I'm very with the white tie and the blue silk shirt or whatever you're wearing.
But you got a better ocean view than I do.
Well, one day, hopefully, we can have something more positive to talk about.
I hope we get some action. I hope this is humiliating enough to certain judges, not just Alex Kaczynski, but to certain judges. You know who you are. And again, I extend my invitation as we're down to how much time, Stephen?
7 minutes.
We got down to 7 minutes. I extend my invitation to all your judges, and particularly to District Attorney Tony Rakowski, also known by me as Tony the Rat.
Right. What about Camilla Harris coming on?
Well,
you
she'll
know,
never do it. I
but
got too much on
I
her.
want to. Don't you know? I want to mention one.
Don't you know I got too much on?
But I want to tell you something about her that I told one of my friends coming up here. She's being sued now in San Diego federal court. This is a really interesting. She's counsel on the Oakland case I'm telling you about that's in appeal. She shouldn't have been counsel for Ronald George because he's being sued as an individual party. And she stayed on the case until she was, elected to the Senate. Now it's Mr. Becerra. But let me tell you why she's being sued for in the San Diego federal court. There was a medical company that was bidding on this big project. And it wouldn't give her, apparently, it's in the news. She's being sued personally, not.
Right, I got it. We're down to 4
yeah,
minutes.
she, to cut to the short story, she wanted them to give her political contributions, et cetera, et cetera. They wouldn't do it. They didn't get the contract. They are suing her now, trying to say they were trying to force them to pay her, and they're suing for damages. They lost a lot of money because they're saying that she basically said, if you don't give me money in terms of political contributions, you're not going to get approved for this project. And this is a big medical corporation with a big law firm. And the same judge that did the Trump University case, he's the judge on it and wouldn't dismiss the case against Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris is probably going to cost the state of California and Governor Jerry Brown a lot of money, indirectly or directly, because of her corruption.
Well, all I can say is 20 years ago, I decided to start doing this show because I saw a little corruption in the little town of Santa Maria. And I thought, I'll do this for a year or two, and then I'll go back to selling real estate and make some real money. And here we are, 20 years later, the corruption is mammoth, way, way greater than anything I ever imagined. And I just got to say, I have to laugh when I hear these people talking about Donald Trump's son-in-law. He's talking to the Russians. Oh my God. Well, I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I didn't vote for Hillary, the murderer of Ambassador Stevens, either. I didn't vote, and I urge you not to vote because we cannot prove our elections are honestly counted. That's the problem.
That's what Darrell Isis claims.
I claim the same thing, and I went where they were counting the votes at the girls' club in Goleta some years ago, and it's on YouTube. You can see them roll. I'm walking in there, the camera rolling. I said, no, you can't videotape in here. I said, why not? Everything in the elections process is supposed to be open and viewable. She said, well, you can come in, but you can't tape. I said, why is all the people in the parking lot that came to count the votes? For you that don't know, there's a mandatory 2 or 3% recount where the machines don't count, they have real people actually look at the ballots, mandatory law.
Right.
But bothered me, and I'm down to like 2 minutes, I gotta get this in. I looked at the parking lot, every bumper sticker was a Democrat bumper sticker. And these are the people randomly selected from the colleges down there in Santa Barbara to do the mandatory recount and paid for it. And I said, why? And I videotaped all these bumper stickers on all these cars. I said, there's not one Republican, not one Libertarian. They're all Democrats. And these are the people you trust to do the mandatory. I'm not saying Democrats are all crooks. I'm just saying, let's have some people that are Republican, some are Libertarian, and some that don't vote at all, counting the mandatory recount. So I didn't vote. I don't believe the votes are honestly counted. The machines can steal it. I've done that show already. You had, what's his name? I've got it on my YouTube clip. He testified that he wrote the software to steal the votes.
Wow.
What more do you need? I've had him on this show. I went to Orlando, Florida years ago to get an interview. We're down, okay, almost out of time. So anyway, I appreciate Dan coming up here 150 miles from Los Angeles.
You have
Thank
some
you.
great restaurants here. There's a reason to come here.
Yeah, we do. We have some good food and the
Good
view,
people.
The view from Ventura County up to Santa Barbara is good. It's a beautiful drive.
Well, there's a reason why JFK and Jackie Kennedy honeymooned in this area. Beautiful up here.
It is. It's beautiful, and the wine is getting better and better every year. We have great wineries here. Just a little plug for my friends that do wine.
And are you an expert on that Santa Maria rub too?
No.
I heard that's really good on the barbecue though.
Santa Maria tri-tip. It's known worldwide. It's the best cut of steak you can get. But anyway, I'm still upset about little Joey and Rachel that were murdered, and the murderer went free. The witness to the murder, who could identify, was murdered. And the tape of that murder was never found. I'm William Wagner. Thanks for watching, people. And tune in again. This will repeat this Sunday. And you can usually catch my show, if you're still listening, on Tuesday, Wednesday at noon, Tuesday at 7:30, Thursday, Friday at 7:30, and Saturday at 7:30, and also runs on Sunday. I forget the time. But I'm on here a lot. Thank you very much for watching. Let's hear some music if we can, please. This is such hard business. The grand juries are going to spontaneously form. We're going to start indicting these people. And the sheriffs are going to have to either get on board or start arresting the good citizens that want to clean up the country. Thanks for watching, people. See you next time.